HBO's The Sopranos follows the life of New Jersey mob boss Tony Soprano and all the colourful characters his life is surrounded by, like his wife and 2 children, his protégee Christopher Moltisanti, and his mob underlings like Silvio, Paulie and Furio. Paulie Walnuts Gualtieri is a soldier in the DiMeo family, later becoming a captain and eventually the underboss of the family. An interesting figure, Paulie is a highly paranoid germaphobe whose petty, jealous and competitive behaviour often puts him and others in trouble. Between season 3 and 4, Paulie is arrested on a gun charge and serves time in prison. As no one comes to visit him or takes care of his mother while he is away, plus the lucrative earning abilities of Paulie's rival Ralph Cifaretto, Paulie becomes bitter towards his own family and decides to do a bit of shit-stirring. During his 4-month stint, Paulie learns that Ralph made an insensitive joke about Johnny Sax's wife, Johnny being the underboss of the powerful New York Lupertazzi family and a very dear friend of Tony Soprano. Paulie phones up Johnny and tells him the joke, which sends Johnny into an irate fit where he demands that Carmine, head of the Lupertazzi crime family, sanctions a hit on Ralph, but he is turned down. Johnny and Paulie continue to talk, and it's implied the two share several dinners and meetings with each other, which the highly manipulative Johnny Sack utilizes to get useful information from Paulie. With Paulie unloading his frustrating woes and family troubles onto Johnny, Johnny is able to make use of this information to squeeze money out of the Sopranos family, such as when Paulie reveals that the assemblyman Ronald Zellman did some work for the Sopranos without the Lupertazzis knowing, and after Johnny puts this to Tony, Tony is forced to give up some of his family's percentages in the project as the two families share the use of Zellman. Paulie's motivation for running information to New York is either because he feels he will become boss one day of the Sopranos, with New York a powerful ally, or because he has delusions of switching families and playing a big role in the Lupertazzi crew. Either way, it's obvious that he's being played by Johnny, and this is made clear to Paulie when, after being repeatedly told that Carmine thinks highly of the 3-time winning Chin Cup champion, when the two finally meet in the episode Eloise, Carmine has no idea who Paulie is, and Paulie realizes he's been played, and he goes back to kissing Tony's ass, and it's assumed he stopped running information to Johnny Sack. Now this entire situation brings up many questions that we can ponder on, one of which is, how could Carmine not recognize Paulie, who's been around for decades in the mob? I've taken a look at this question in another video which you can check out, and while we're on the subject, if you haven't already done so, consider checking out the channel and subscribing if you like what you see. You can also support the channel on Patreon, where you can get your name in my videos and early access to videos months before they are released. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about today was, why did Johnny not tell Tony that Paulie was the one who told him the joke? Johnny and Tony were good friends, and Tony knew that someone from his family was speaking out of turn, so wouldn't it be good for their sometimes fractured relationship if Johnny let loose that it was Paulie who started the whole Ginny Sack telephone war, and that it was he who gave New York all that private information? What benefit does Johnny get in protecting a nobody like Paulie when he'd want to keep Tony, boss of the family, a happy man? One way of looking at this is to actually break down 2 different time periods where Johnny could have made it known that Paulie was the wind beneath his wings. One is where the tensions were high, and when Johnny demanded a sit-down with New Jersey, specifically when Tony told Johnny that he would give Ralph on a platter if he just told Tony who had told him about the joke, and as we all know, Johnny thought about it and then went on the defensive, grandstanding, and going on about how if this was years ago, would he even have had to ask to whack Ralph. The second period where Johnny could have told Tony was after all the hullabaloo was over, when the issue had been resolved and Johnny accepted Ralph's apology. Maybe even after Ralph died, or after Johnny became boss, Tony and Johnny could be having one of their meetings, and maybe as leverage in a business transaction, or just for the hell of it, Tony could have just said, "Hey, remember that whole joke thing? Well, do you want to know who told me?" It is actually something I wondered when watching The Sopranos. It's like, once the whole Ginny Sack joke storyline is over, everyone kind of forgets about this, but you'd think Paulie would be constantly shitting himself over the possibility that Johnny Sack could one day tell Tony that not only he told him about the joke, but he told him about inside Sopranos information, and if Tony found out, surely Paulie would get killed for this. Surely it would be seen as a betrayal of the family, the proof that Tony finally needed to kill Paulie, something which he did contemplate doing in the show. I can't see Tony simply fining Paulie. His envelopes are light enough as it is without being taxed, and given that Tony is only really ever impressed with Paulie, I can see him getting rid of the guy after no longer being able to trust him for giving away family secrets. So why didn't Johnny tell Tony? Well, I've done some thinking, and there's a few reasons I've come up with. First of all, during that sit-down between New York and New Jersey, Johnny is pressed to reveal who the informant was, and even Carmine thinks this is a reasonable exchange in return for Ralph's head. But had he mentioned that it was Paulie in a series of conversations between the two men behind Tony's back, as opposed to, say, a random Sopranos associate mentioning it in passing, it would completely destroy Johnny Sax's credibility as a New York underboss. He wouldn't be considered trustworthy anymore by his friend Tony, with him going behind the guy's back and profiting from his underling. He would also lose Carmine's trust because Johnny used Carmine's good name to butter up Paulie, but Carmine had no idea this plan was being devised. It would be pretty embarrassing for Johnny to just say, "Yeah, me and Paulie were shooting the shit and he told me about the joke," and a whole lot of other things. In addition to this, Paulie wasn't even there when the joke was made, so he isn't a credible witness, and therefore Tony and Ralph could just deny the joke was ever made and close the case. It would open Pandora's box by involving little Paulie, who told Paulie the joke, and the other mobsters present could also be questioned. Suddenly everyone's involved, and they would just say whatever line Tony fed them. Johnny's playing everyone in this storyline, including his own boss, and by giving up Paulie, in a manner of speaking, he would essentially be ratting. Think about it. If this mobster can give up a fellow La Cosa Nostra member, put him out to pasture just because of a fat joke, what could the feds do to him under intense questioning? The minute he says Paulie's name, no one can trust Johnny with their secrets, with their business dealings, because who knows, whenever Johnny is next pressured up or his ego is hurt because of a wife joke, he might start singing like a canary. And speaking of ego, that's another thing to consider. Johnny is genuinely insulted by the joke. He is enraged at the idea of a room full of men taking the piss out of his wife and being unable to do anything about it. And as Uncle Junior says, he's right. A man in the old days would not be expected to stand for such a thing. So Johnny may have also refused to give up Paulie's name out of principle. Out of the fact that he should be allowed to kill Ralph because of the joke and shouldn't have to stoop to such low levels as an underboss of having to bring forward a witness when everyone knows what Ralph really said. Let's put a positive spin on things. Maybe Johnny never gave up Paulie quite simply because he's a stand-up guy. He is shown to be honourable in many ways. He doesn't cheat on his wife. He defends her honour. Sure, he was playing Paulie, but he took their secret to his grave because maybe it was the right thing to do, and giving the guy up would be as good as killing him. And maybe, who knows, maybe Johnny actually liked Paulie. Maybe he thought there was a chance he could still get more information out of him in the future. He has already benefited a lot from him, and maybe it's a rare humane act from one of these mobsters to protect one of their own from a whacking based on what Paulie has given Johnny in the past. Let's look at this from another angle. Now, this might not be a very strong theory, but hear me out. Yes, Johnny wanted to kill Ralph. He even went out of his way to organize a hit behind Carmine's back. But maybe, just maybe, he was making a big show because, as a man, he needed to be seen as defending his wife's honor. After all, he didn't go through with the hit in the end, although admittedly, he only stopped when he saw Ginny stuffing her face. Maybe Johnny didn't want Ralph to die. If Ralph went away, it could potentially damage the Esplanade business, and in a scene between Johnny and his wife, it's established that construction is one of Johnny's biggest earning rackets, and his pockets are a lot lighter during Tony and Carmine's feud, which involved Carmine temporarily shutting down construction. If Johnny gives up Ralph, Ralph dies, and potentially a giant revenue stream of Johnny's dies with him. So in the end, ironically, given everything he has said, it was all about the money in the end, and after all of Johnny's emotional outbursts, Johnny Sack, ever the pragmatist, took the sensible decision and chose to make a big scene out of the joke but never go as far as to actually get Ralph killed and thus damage the construction racket. Like I said, not the most plausible theory because it really seemed like Johnny wanted Ralph dead, but it's a theory I like, and it would reiterate that all these guys care about is money, and even someone like Johnny who loves his wife dearly would be willing to allow his wife to get insulted if it meant he could continue to make money. What's next, he gets to fuck her for $1 million? There are other reasons that could have flashed through Johnny's head. For one, Tony giving up Ralph could put Johnny in Tony's pocket. Years down the line, when trouble arises with Phil Leotardo, Tony could turn around and say, "Hey, remember when I took care of the joke incident and gave up Ralph? Well, I'm not going to give up my cousin, that animal blondetto. You owe me one. And also, the whole thing with Johnny and Paulie talking, mobsters getting together and secretly making alliances and profiting off one another, is not a big thing and is a very common occurrence in the mob. This is just one situation that threatened to boil over because of the sensitivity of that joke. Heck, Tony got together with the rest of his capos in the early seasons behind Junior's back while Junior was the boss of the family. Surely that's a far greater betrayal. And in terms of why Johnny never brought it up years later, why would he? The situation was finalised, it was over and done with, sorted between all parties. Ralph was dead. Why bring up old feuds and risk being embarrassed again by having people repeat the joke? Let sleeping dogs lie. So there you have it. Why do you think Johnny never told Tony about Paulie telling him the joke? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel and thanks for watching.